Okay, we'll go ahead with the class. We're getting to some interesting material on the molecular relationship. And so we'll review some of the basics here. First of all, the male and female working together produces one unit. Now, the basic molecule that we're attempting to create will consist of 12 units of 24 people, 12 males and 12 females. This consists of 4 triads with a leader selected by each triad, and each male and female counts uh, as one vote in normal circumstances. Okay, now the leading unit of each molecule will be selected by one of or 2 methods. Number one, by the power of initiation. If you go and you initiate something, then you are a natural leader, and unless people are dissatisfied with your leadership, you are the default leader just because you started it. A little bit like starting a business. If you start a business, you're the one that writes the checks and does the thinking and gets everything going. So you get to call the shots pretty much, but you take you listen to your employees, because if you don't listen to them, they will quit, go somewhere else. So initiation is one way. The second way, if a molecule or triad or whatever in the molecular order is in existence and a new leader is needed, then it's done by the power of election. So somebody volunteers to be a leader. Say you have 2 people volunteer to be a leader, and so then you take an election and see which one is selected. Then if, say, there's a problem and people are dissatisfied, somebody else can always come forward and say, well, I would like a chance to lead this group, and so I want to call for a vote to see if I would be supported as a new leader. And so what happens then would be you'd call for a vote, and if the person that thinks he would be a more qualified leader steps forward and is elected, then he would replace the other uh, person. And but if he's not, then the other guy just keeps his leadership going. And so that's basically uh, the process there. Now, there's going to be all kinds of different molecules in the future. In the future, we're going to have human molecular scientists, or I don't know what they'll be called, but they'll be experimenting with all kinds of human combinations and molecular orders to see what kind of results they get. And there's only one molecule that we have in recorded history, and that's the one that Jesus established. And so we know that one uh, works and produces interesting results. So that's the one we're going after. Sanat Camara has a molecule 7, for instance, and that's for a different set of purposes than the 12. So the number 12 units is uh, a key one, because 12 is a number of ultimate perfection. There's 12 creative hierarchies, 5 creative hierarchies, and the human family is just one of them. But 5 of them are esoteric, and they're not in any physical reality. but 7 of them are in the worlds of form. So this 7 and 12 are 2 very potent numbers. Okay, but after the correct numbers are achieved, and the members, you have enough numbers together that are able to have soul contact, overlook everybody else's flaws, see the divine, and even aggravating people. So once everybody can achieve this, and there's a possibility of achieving molecular link. Now we may have all the ingredients together, but that still does not produce the link. It's like creating a light bulb. You can create a light bulb and have all the ingredients in the light bulb, but if the light bulb is not plugged in, it will not turn on. Now, there's many groups in the world that have been created, and there's such a thing as group energy. And Napoleon Hill talks a lot about this. He calls it a mastermind. Talks about getting together people, and they kind of creating what he calls a mastermind. And a mastermind is composed of people with various talents. And he says, when you have a mastermind, and you as an individual only have so much ability, so much talent, so much learning, and so on. But if you get a group of diverse people together, they create almost like one group mind. And you can draw ideas from these, almost like you have ESP from your mastermind, if you are meeting together in high cooperation. So just a regular group of people getting together, even for business or for any purpose, have a sharing of group energy and mental energy, that they produce something higher than themselves. But then there's something higher still, higher than that. And many people think that, they've achieved the ultimate when they've got that mastermind thing going, but that's far from what the ultimate is. The step that we're looking at in building a molecular group is to take the light bulb and plug it in to the source. And to have this happen, we need a connection to the hierarchy. Does anyone know when this connection to the hierarchy occurred in the days of Jesus?
Between Jesus or between the disciples?
It was during the time he was with the Ascends, wasn't it?
What? What'd you say?
It was during the time that he spent with the Ascends.
That wasn't the actual connection time, but that was preparatory for it.
You mean Jesus in the hierarchy or the disciples in the hierarchy?
Jesus and his molecule when he was alive and with them. When did the connection occur?
Baptism.
Right, the baptism. Right, and so that was the connection point, and that is what has to happen again. So the molecule needs connected to the hierarchy. The hierarchy in turn is connected to Shambhala. Shambhala is linked to the solar logos. And then the solar logos is linked to the one about whom naught can be said, which is a logos that's over 7 different solar systems. Now the planetary and the other logi are advanced human beings, whereas the spirit of the material earth is just getting started in its evolution. though its higher self is very advanced. So in the planet itself, you have 3 points. You have the lower entity, which is like what we call Mother Nature, so to speak, that's incarnated in the earth as an entity that brings life to the planet itself. And then you have Sanat Chimera, which is like represents the soul of the planet, in between the higher and lower. And then you have the higher self of the planet kind of representing the monad of the planet, so to speak. So Sanat Chimera is in between. He's the mediator between the higher and lower elements of the planet. And thus the spiritual enemy flows from the highest life in the universe by the power of the molecular order down to the hierarchy that is presided over by the Christ. But this energy flow, however, is cut off from mankind because the humans and the kingdom under us, such as animals, and have fallen away from the molecular principle. So the spiritual energy, the molecular order, therefore, misses the human and the animal and vegetable kingdom to some extent, and the mineral. So everything among the tiny lives, though, still has a molecular order in it. The cells in our bodies are on the molecular order, the atoms, the molecules. So in the microcosmic world, everything is on the molecular order and it's linked up correctly. And everything above us is linked up. The higher lives above us are linked up. But now, that is the presiding lives that preside over the planets and the star systems. They are linked up, but we are missing out. And so what was called the fall is kind of where we fell away from this principle in many eons ago, and we need to be restored to this spiritual link. And so when part of the mission of Jesus was to create this restoration of the link between heaven and earth. And when that link happened, well, the link was prophesied, and John the Baptist knew that a link was going to occur. And so he was started baptizing people, and when he baptized people, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit seemed to descend upon many people he baptized, and he was waiting for a particular event to occur, and then he began to wonder, well, how am I going to recognize the person that's going to create this link? And here's an exact quote from the King James Bible. John the Baptist was told, now keep in mind, John the Baptist different from John the Beloved. He was wondering, well, how am I going to recognize him? And here's the exact quote. And I knew him not, but he that sent me to baptize with water, the same said unto me, upon whom thou shalt see the Spirit descending and remaining upon him, the same as he which baptizes with the Holy Ghost. And I saw and bear record that this is the Son of God. So here, in answer to this question, how am I going to tell when this person occurs? He says, when you baptize somebody, he says, thou shalt see the Spirit descending upon him and remaining on him. That same is he which baptizes with the Holy Ghost. Okay, so this was the link. And so John was waiting, and he baptized people, and they felt the Spirit, and then for a period of time, and then it left. And he kept doing this, and he kept waiting for this sign to occur. And then one day, here comes his cousin Jesus, and he baptizes him, and he saw the Spirit of God descend upon him, and he said it remained in him. And then when he saw the Spirit descend upon him like a dove and remain in him, then he knew that this was him, and this was the link that would make possible the creation of a molecule that would like plug in the light bulb, so to speak, so the spiritual energy could be turned on. And it's interesting that when Jesus had this the Spirit descend upon him and come into him, that right afterwards he went into the wilderness and spent 40 days there. Why did he go in the wilderness and spend 40 days right after? Now imagine if you had the Spirit of Christ descend upon you, and you'd be so befuddled by it that you'd think, man, I got to go in the wilderness and figure this out and commune with this presence, find out what it wants from me and everything. So that's why he went in the wilderness for 40 days, was to commune and figure out what was happening. Because but what was interesting, that he would then, when he began his mission, he kept saying, when things happen, he says, it's not me that's doing these things, it's the Father that is in me that's doing these things. And then the Jews came to him and they said to him, you know, it says in our law that you have to have the testimony of 2 men to be valid, and you're just one guy testifying of yourself. And Jesus said to him, no, you're wrong. I am one person testifying, and the Father that is in me, he is another that is testifying to these things. So so he kept explaining this to his disciples. And then let me read you this interesting passage where the disciples were having a hard time understanding this principle of the hierarchical connection and the fact that there were 2 entities in one body. And Philip says to Jesus, he says, you keep talking about the Father that's in you. Well, to show us this Father. And Jesus says, if you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from henceforth you know him and have seen him. Philip saith unto the Lord, show us the Father, and it suffices us. And Jesus said unto him, have I been so long time with you, and yet you have not known me, Philip? He that has seen me has seen the Father, and how sayest thou, shew us the Father? Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he does the works. Okay. So Jesus was saying the great works that he was able to do, he says, it wasn't him, it was that entity that was within him that was much more powerful than he was. Now, DK tells us that Jesus, the disciple, was the reincarnation of Joshua from the days of Moses. But the Christ that was in Jesus that was doing the works. He was a reincarnation of Krishna and other great entities, like also Melchizedek and I believe one of the latest Adam also. So Jesus made many references like this, but the disciples were slow to understand exactly who or what the Father was. Jesus even went so far as to promise the disciples that they could have the same experience of the divine possession that he had. He said this, "If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him." So this prophecy was actually fulfilled on the day of Pentecost, where all the people in the room felt that divine presence, and they actually had fire over their heads. Whether it was a visible fire or not, it's possible that maybe those who are more in tune were able to see it. But the book of Acts tells us that everyone had a fire over their heads on the day of Pentecost when the molecule was activated again. Because when after Jesus or Judas betrayed the Christ, the molecule was shattered and it had to be reestablished. And so on the day of Pentecost, the whole group was overshadowed at that point. And so this is what we want to happen with our group, is to eventually reach a point where an acceptable molecule can be created, the link established again, and then the fire shared amongst the whole group. Because even when the apostles were with Christ, they had some activation and they were able to do some pretty miraculous healings, but they weren't completely activated until the day of Pentecost. And the day of Pentecost, every member was overshadowed, and they all felt the presence. And it was a wonderful experience that very few have had.
Were these flames of fire by any chance the color white?
I don't know. I would guess it would have been kind of a strong violet or indigo would be my guess. But why do you think white? Because that's a combination of all the colors?
No, from an experience I had back when in my late 20s, when I was having lunch in my car and had a enlightenment, and I saw a light come across the parking lot and enter into my truck, and it was the white. It was like standing right in front of an arc lamp. It was totally bright white, and I could see right through my skin. I could see my bones and
Really?
and blood vessels and everything. And I've never had anybody tell me what the heck was that about. You know, it's like I have no idea. You know, it was kind of like the light you have when you have a brilliant idea or a bright idea. You know, kind of thing. You get this white light above your head. Well, this white light was filled up, and when I got done with my lunch, I walked back into the factory. I walked across the gravel parking lot, and I never felt my feet touching the ground. And when I walked in the door, the first guy that saw me said, "Rick, why are you glowing?"
Really?
So I have no idea what happened to me that day, but it was a lot of fun. I tell you what, I had a smile for like 2 days after.
Well, you have made a good link with your soul there, probably.
Something.
Yeah. Now, one of the more interesting reference that Jesus made to the molecular connection was the one where this one here, he says this, "I am the vine, and my Father is a husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now you are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine. So in other words, he's telling us that a branch can't grow any fruit on it unless it's connected to a bigger branch or a vine and receiving the life-giving sap and energy from the tree or the vine itself. He says this has to happen. This connection has to happen, or they cannot be totally alive. So it says, as a branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches, and he that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. Without me you can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. So he's given the principle of how this works. He's saying he's the vine not because he had a big ego, but because the spiritual connection was him at that particular point in time. And they had to be linked to him. He was linked, Jesus was linked to the Christ. The Christ was linked to Shambhala. And if they wanted to be alive in the spirit and have the connection to the spiritual hierarchy, he said he was the connecting point. He was it at that time. Now people read this and they think, well, he's the Son of God, that's why. But the reason was that he had the Spirit descend upon him and enter into him and remained with him. And so he was the connecting point. And that connecting point has to be established. This is what every other group is missing, is that connecting link that has to be established in order to bring down the higher spiritual flows. And he says, without this link, it just, you just will not be alive completely. Now, you take a branch and you sever it from a tree, it will live for a few days and then die. That's comparable to like the average person. We are like a severed link. We are born and then we die after a time, and that's it. But if a person can be connected, even death can be overcome. Now, overcoming death is more than overcoming just extending the life of the body. The life of the body can be extended indefinitely if that serves a purpose, but it's also life is more than the physical body. True life is a connection to the higher spiritual energies. So even if your body is born and dies, if you're connected to the higher spiritual energies in this life or the next life, then you are considered alive in the way that Jesus was talking about life. And so this is important. Now, to create a molecule in this age, then, the same thing needs to happen there needs to be, first of all, a spiritual link and a divine possession. And the divine possession will only happen when it looks like there's a strong possibility of creating a molecule. And the molecule will only be successful if all the members in it achieve a measure of soul control, soul contact, and be able to see the divine in every other person in the group, well, every other person in reality, really, so that they can overlook the personality. And overlooking the personality in a group is more difficult than people think. You meet a lot of people who think they're very enlightened, and then you press the right buttons, you find out that they got just as much personality problems as anyone else. So it's interesting how many people think a group soul contact may be easy, but it is quite difficult. It's hard to find one even married couple that are in enough harmony that they can be in soul contact together at the same time. So this link has to be established, and after the one link is established, then the possibility of creating an entire molecule where everybody is linked becomes a strong possibility. Now, Juan told me of an experience he had where he felt a presence come to him for what was it, a period of 3 days, did you say, Juan? Is he here? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe he had to
Yeah,
leave.
those happened once, like
Oh, there he is.
six years ago or so. Yeah, and it was like 24 hours was with me, and then slowly dissipate, and I was so happy and laughing, and I was trying to digest what's happened, and but there was very pleasant feeling.
Yeah.
And since then, maybe some approach like you have this week, but never happen again on the same level. But yeah, I wish I can have few times same experience. It's just wonderful feeling.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great to feel that way all the time?
Yes,
So,
that's what I mean.
yeah.
It's just I was like same kind of experience like Rick has. He didn't think that he's touching the ground. You always like floating in the air. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go into, let me see how much time we got here. Does anybody have any questions over anything before we move on? I don't know if we have time to, the next section here is we're going to go into the structure of the molecules and how they're going to expand. And we'll just go into this briefly. Okay, I'm going to do some sharing here. Okay, can everybody see that? Completed molecule. So this is basically a completed molecule. Now each unit, you got 2 circles, stands for male and female. The one that's grayed in is the initiating unit, and this is the one where a member of the hierarchy will actually be in the body of one of these people. And then from this point, they link with every member in the molecule. You can see how the links work there. Okay. And so this is a good sample of a completed molecule. Now, as the molecule expands, you don't have enough people to create a second molecule. So you have associates, and these circles are associates, and they link up with the molecule itself. And they can share the energy until they get enough to create a second molecule. Now the next step is creating what we call a master molecule. This consists of 20 completed molecules, or 240 units, 480 people, plus associates. So this is a diagram of just representing how that works. Now the 20 initiates who lead the first 20 molecules will create an inner molecule that will have a union and spiritual power greater than has ever been demonstrated on the earth. For never in the history of known humanity has there been a master molecule ever created. Now some of these will be initiates who have incarnated on the earth for the specific purpose of assisting in the creation of the molecular order. Now, the next major stage of growth will be the creation of a city or a pyramid molecule with 12,000 units. So these are all master molecules. And then you have the central point where the connecting link occurred. And all these others are linked to the original. Here's another way to look at it. You have the originating link, and then all the rest of them are linked with it. And then the final step is the city of the New Jerusalem, composed of 144,000 male-female units, or 288,000 individuals, creating the 144,000 representative of the New Jerusalem. Now the leaders of these 50 master molecules will be eventually be a governing group, and they will be called the Council of 50. Okay, well, in this one here, I'm got ahead of myself. The leaders of each one of these will be composed of a council of 50. Now, when a cell is, this is what we would call a cell. Now, it's not as complex, perhaps, as a human cell yet. There's much bigger things to be developed as evolution proceeds, but for our purposes, that's what we would call it. And this fulfills the 144,000 of the book of Revelation, which follow the Lamb wherever he goeth. Now, when the cell is created, there will appear a new life form on the earth that in the scriptures, it's called Zion. Zion will have powers and properties that have never been seen on the earth in recorded history, beyond which we can't hardly imagine today. Zion will be a higher than a molecule, just as in nature, the cell is much higher than a single molecule. Now, when the city is completed, then the second coming of Christ will definitely be a historical fact. So according to the Bible, this cell will have some unusual properties. In Isaiah chapter 4, for instance, we're told that Zion will be covered with some sort of a dome, possibly physical or spiritual, and the canopy will protect it from the fierce elements, and it shall be a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Then in the book of Revelations, John saw the heavenly Jerusalem, which is a group of cells that will manifest in the future age, and it'll appear on the earth. And it says the city of New Jerusalem is supposed to come down out of heaven is fantastically big, especially considered that it was these dimensions were given 2,000 years ago when cities were not very big. But it said it lieth 4 square, and it's going to be 1,500 miles wide and length and high. So that's a fantastic dimensions. Now, whether that's probably a lot of symbolism there, because it's hard to imagine even by the highest stretches of our imagination of a city being built that high. It says, and the building of the wall of it was jasper, and the city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. And the street of the city was gold as if it were transparent glass. And I saw no temple there, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city hath no need of the sun, nor the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did enlighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it, and there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. So the thing about these numbers too is they're not limiting numbers. The Jehovah's Witnesses taught for many years that there was going to be 144,000 saved, and that was it. Once the number was filled, that was going to be it, and Jesus was going to come again and everything. Well, the trouble was they grew to the point that more than 144,000 thought that they were going to be the 144,000, so that kind of made their teachings problematic there. But that's not a limiting number. There will be one cell of 144,000, then there will be another cell made, and then another. And eventually, the molecular order will eventually stretch all over the earth until approximately 60% of the planet will eventually be on it. And that may take a long time. It might take 1,000,000 years or so. But eventually, these connecting links will be made. And an extremely important one, of course, will be the first one that doesn't get destroyed. And that was the problem with the one that Jesus created, was that after he left, it eventually fell apart. And with the teachings on it were suppressed. Many of them were, many teachings, early writings were destroyed. When Christianity first started up, many of the religious leaders were threatened by the fact that there was taught about a resurrection and the Christ and the molecule, and they did everything they could to destroy all the records that had anything to do with anything that Jesus did. This is why they can't find any writings about Jesus before, the first century, because the religious leaders destroyed everything connected with him. A lot of people today think that Jesus didn't even exist because they can't find any records of him before in the first century of his life, or the first century after he was born. So a lot of scholars question whether or not Jesus really actually lived, but the reason they can't find anything is because the religious leaders were so threatened, they destroyed everything they could. Every time they found anything that was written about him, and there were a lot of things written about him that were confiscated by the leaders and burned. And so it wasn't until some time after his appearance on the earth that any writing was written that was able to endure. And they were not perfect, but they're what we have, and they're as close to the true record as is normally available.
JJ,
Yeah.
JJ,
Yeah.
I think in Nag Hammadi Dead Sea Scrolls, there's writings that are unaltered, and they have a lot of early records that we're not accustomed to about Jesus and what he did and where he was at.
Right, and those are the type of things that they tried to destroy, and some of them have been retrieved, and some of them, many of the runs that were destroyed were never reconstituted. But yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls did reveal some things that have been suppressed for 2,000 years. Okay. Yeah, if they would have been discovered earlier, they would have been destroyed also. And the upsetting thing about that kid that discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls is his mother sent him out to find some kindling wood, and he found these scrolls, and he brought them back, and she burned a bunch of them because they needed them for fire, and they didn't realize what they had. So it's too bad that I always wondered what the gal burned. What they might have contained, but fortunately most of them were preserved. Okay, any other comments or questions before we wrap it up?
Do we have any, is there evidence of people destroying the original documents?
There is, before 300 BC, there's is evidence that they suppressed. They suppressed the Gnostic.
Did they burn him when they burned Alexandria, the library? That's when they started destroying all the scrolls.
Yeah, there's
And
not,
some of them got taken into the caves and hid.
right. There's a lot of evidence how there's just been suppression all along by religious fanatics. But as far as we don't have concrete evidence that like the early gospels were destroyed, but there's a lot of evidence that most scholars do believe there was a manuscript called Q. They call it Q, from which the other the three of the gospels derived their stories. And so even the regular scholars feel there was at least one or maybe more earlier versions of the gospel that just didn't survive. And of course, the reason they didn't survive is because they were probably burned by the religious leaders that were threatened by the rise of Christianity. But Well, fortunately, in this age, you put stuff on the internet, it winds up in a million different places. So it's going to be a lot harder to destroy anything that comes forward in this age. We think, never know, but the forces of suppression are certainly rising their ugly heads right now. As free speech is really becoming under attack. You have to be really careful what you say. So, you know, it's like in the book 1984, the main character, Winston, his job was to go through history and rewrite it so Big Brother would be pleased with what history said. So that was his job. He did nothing but rewrite history. And we hope that we never reach that point again or close to it. Okay, anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got wanted to share that the photograph that I've got up now was taken at the first gathering on our lunch break. There was, I wouldn't call it a rainbow because it was a complete circle.
Yeah.
And it was, that circle had a rainbow circle around it. That was, the colors were in the opposite order. And I took out my camera, held up my hand to block the sun from burning it out, and took that photograph.
Huh. Yeah, that's quite the photograph. Looks like something done by a professional.
It was a single shot, one photograph, no props, nothing. Just I held my hand up and took a picture of my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you want to get a little bit deeper into where the world's going with this, is look up John D. Rockefeller's Masonic Creed and see what he has to say. It'll startle you, believe me. And they're right on target of doing what they're saying they're going to do in this creed.
Yeah.
Pretty informative. And
Well,
scary.
there's definitely nefarious plans about the thing about the Dark Brotherhood that people don't understand is they move the center of focus from one place to another. So as soon as people get suspicious, hey, this is where they're really operating from, the Illuminati or whatever, or the UN or whatever they're blaming it on, they move from one place to another for their center of focus. Right now, I believe their center of focus is on the media. And that's where what they're using to promote. They've always used the media somewhat, but it's not been the center of focus till now. And that's where I think the indoctrination for the dark side is coming from.
JJ,
Yeah.
do you think Jesus's counterpart, Mary, experienced some of the divine possession, that there was a sharing at times of the Christ?
That's an interesting question. She definitely shared in the consciousness, but I don't think she shared it in the fullness, but I think she shared it as much as possible for the situation that she was in. And she now there's an overshadowing and there's a divine possession. Divine possession can only happen with like one person, but the overshadowing can happen with many people. So the Christ could overshadow when the apostles met together on the day of Pentecost, they were overshadowed. And everyone experienced it very similar to the divine possession. But I think Mary Magdalene could have been overshadowed. But she was definitely a key figure. Okay, anything else?
JJ, I found it interesting, just an observation that second diagram illustration you showed of the master molecule,
Yeah.
it it was really the Star of David.
Yeah. Star of David shows up all kinds of places. It's,
I was just going to say it definitely does.
yeah,
It's a recurring theme.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, a little bit over time. Didn't mean to keep you too long here, but been a good group, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, JJ, for everything.
Bet.
Thank you, JJ. Good class.
Thank you, JJ.
Everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.